Hey folks, thanks for watching my monologues. In case you haven't heard, I'm told there's an election coming up pretty soon. In some areas, there's a lot of violence and civil unrest. If you're in the market for personal protection for yourself or your family, I'd encourage you to visit Guns Etc. Guns Etc. is 10,200 square feet and they have product. And they're getting new product all the time. They'll work with you to get the exact type of protection that fits your needs. Stop by their store in Mesa or visit gunsetcetera.com where you'll have access to over $400 million worth of firearms and accessories. And if you like my monologues, please subscribe to 960 The Patriots YouTube channel. Welcome back. Happy Thursday, September 10th, 2020. Today is the day before what we used to say was the day the world stopped turning 19 years ago. A lot of us thought it was a time, a moment where moral clarity made a comeback in our culture, when the postmodern and pseudo-sophisticated teachings of relativism, that there is no right or wrong, vanished in the smoke of the Twin Towers at the Pentagon and in a place few of us heard of until then, called Shanksville. It was true for a little bit, but not for long. The forces of decomposition, it turns out, are awfully powerful in the West. That's why some of us call this the crisis of the West. But for a time, in wrapping our wounds, we were a better people. More Bibles were sold right after 9/11, more 12-step meetings were attended, people wanting to get sober, more divorces were put off in large and noticeable numbers. All of them in large and noticeable numbers, and saying great things about America and Americans was neither controversial nor political, except in a few university faculty lounges and classrooms that just could not help themselves. That thought of America could not accept, in thinking about America, could not accept any kind of praise for America. Too much of what we thought of as that minority, tiny minority, was underestimated. If not in numbers, then certainly in suasion. For it is now commonplace, again, to run America down, to divide America, to blame America before her enemies. And it is commonplace in the halls of Congress and in state legislatures, as it is on the streets in major America and once great cities. We may want to call it the Ward Churchill effect. It plagues us because we could have used instead more of a Winston Churchill effect. Do you recall Ward Churchill? He was the college professor out of Colorado who in September of 2001 wrote that what happened on 9/11 was the fault of America. He wrote it was the chickens coming home to roost for our genocidal imperialism, his phrase. He called employees in the financial industry in New York City little Eichmanns, his phrase. He would be followed by others, including the man who provided religious counsel to Barack Obama and his family, whom Barack Obama named a book after. Thus, the dangers of not knowing history as much as not knowing what is right in front of your faces. Thus, the dangers of using terms like imperialism and not knowing what they mean, or genocide. Thus, the dangers of invoking names like Eichmann and applying them to America without understanding or knowing the enormity of what Eichmann stood for and did, or the decency and greatness of what ordinary Americans do. Thus the dangers of reductio ad Hitlerum, making everything one dislikes an analog to the worst crimes against humanity and civilization abuse. Leo Strauss, who coined that phrase, reductio ad Hitlerum, put it this way: it's the reduction of everything one finds distasteful to Hitler, and it necessarily leads to nihilism. That is to say, to the conclusion that every preference, however evil, base, or insane, would have to be judged before the tribunal of human reason as being as legitimate as just another preference, close quote. It leads to no good or true understanding of right and wrong. It reduces every small peccadillo to the worst forms of tragic and human failure. It does not even understand the word true, because it does not acknowledge any particular values or verities, no matter how base or how false. What happened to unravel so quickly that which we had so briefly nearly 19 years ago, if only for a few months? What happened? Moral clarity cannot be assumed or presumed, is what we've come to learn. Forces of falsity, forces against truth, forces of moral relativism, indeed are strong. William Bennett reminded us about something Saul Bellow wrote. Bellow wrote that our post-industrial, post-Christian, post-everything period of flux and crisis does not breed stingable horses, only millions of gadflies. Today we have millions more gadflies and not enough stingable horses. What is a stingable horse? It's a person who stands for the truth in whatever arena he finds himself and who endures however strong the sting. You might think of people like John Paul II or Alexander Solzhenitsyn or Martin Luther King Jr. or the Margaret Thatchers and Ronald Reagans of the world. It is true of countries, too, taken in their totality. Perhaps in an effort to resummon some of the feeling of that so now forgotten period 19 years ago, I thought I'd read you something that was flying around pretty popularly back then. It was written by Peter Ferrara. He wrote, "You probably missed it in the rush of news last week, but there was actually a report that someone in Pakistan published in a newspaper there an offer of a reward to anyone who killed an American, any American. So I just thought I would write to let them know what an American is, so they would know when they found one. An American is English, or French, or Italian, Irish, German, Spanish, Polish, Russian, or Greek. An American may also be African, Indian, Chinese, Japanese, Australian, Iranian, Asian, or Arab, or Pakistani, or Afghan. An American is Christian, or he could be Jewish, or Buddhist, or Muslim. In fact, there are a great many Muslims in America, not just in the Middle East. The only difference is that in America, they are free to worship as each of them choose. An American is also free to believe in no religion. For that, he will answer only to God, not to the government, or to armed thugs claiming to speak for the government and for God. An American is from the most prosperous land in the history of the world. The root of that prosperity can be found in the Declaration of Independence, which recognizes the God-given right of each man and woman to the pursuit of happiness. An American is generous. Americans have helped out just about every other nation in the world in their time of need. When Afghanistan was overrun by the Soviet army, Americans came with arms and supplies to enable the people to win back their country. As of the morning of September 11th, Americans had given more than any other nation to the poor in Afghanistan. An American does not have to obey the mad ravings of ignorant, ungodly, cruel old men. American men will not be fooled into giving up their lives to kill innocent people so that these foolish old men may hold on to power. American women are free to show their beautiful faces to the world as each of them choose. An American is free to criticize his government's officials when they are wrong in his or her own opinion. Then he is free to replace them by majority vote. Americans welcome people from all lands, all cultures, all religions because they are not afraid. They are not afraid that their history, their religion, their beliefs will be overrun or forgotten. That is because they know they are free to hold to their religion, their beliefs, their history, as each of them choose. And just as Americans welcome all, they enjoy the best that everyone has to bring from all over the world. The best science, the best technology, the best products, the best books, the best music, the best food, the best athletes. Americans welcome the best, but they also welcome the least. The national symbol of America welcomes your tired and your poor and wretched refuse of teeming shores, the homeless, the tempest-tossed. These, in fact, are the people, all of them, who built America. Many of them were working in the Twin Towers on the morning of September 11th, earning a better life for their families. I've been told that people in the towers were from at least 30 and maybe many, many more countries, cultures, first languages, even including those that aided and abetted the terrorists. So you can try to kill an American if you must. Hitler did. So did General Tojo and Stalin and Mao and every bloodthirsty tyrant in the history of the world. But in doing so, you would be killing yourself, because Americans are not a particular people from a particular place. They are the embodiment of the human spirit of freedom. Everyone who holds to that spirit everywhere is an American. So look around you. You may find more Americans in your land than you thought were there. One day they will rise up and overthrow the old, ignorant, tired tyrants that trouble too many lands. Then those lands, too, will join the community of free and prosperous nations, and America will welcome them when they do so. Amazing how much of that knowledge we all know has been distorted, forgotten, ignored, and retaught, that is to say, propagandized against. but we knew it once, all of us did. Which is why I say we need more Winston Churchills than Ward Churchills. The Winston variety knew this country better than the Ward variety, even though Winston didn't live here and Ward did. Back to Bennett. In the defense of truth, we must be prudent, large-minded, non-censorious, intellectually serious, and morally imaginative. But we must also be engaged and purposeful. And perhaps above all, we must be brave. We must not be afraid. In 1938, Winston Churchill gave a speech called Civilization. Let me quote. But it is vain to imagine that the mere perception or declaration of right principles will be of any value unless they are supported by those qualities of civic virtue and manly courage, which in the last resort must be the defense of right and reason. Civilization will not last. Freedom will not survive. Peace will not be kept unless a very large majority of mankind unite together to defend them. Those would be Americans. Right and reason. Do we live in that age? Sometimes it's awfully hard to tell. That is our present crisis. But if we do not have right and reason, we will sink to that place Ronald Reagan described, telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in the United States, where men were free. Look who's on what side today. Look at what side sees America and sees greatness worth preserving, and look at what side sees misery worth radically transforming. The latter discounts everything Mr. Ferrara wrote about. The former loves it. It is, again, a time for choosing. I'm Seth Leibson. We'll be right back.